Hey, I'm going to show you how to make the floured focaccia. We're just going to start with the basic focaccia bread, and then I'll show you how to decorate it with flowers or whatever kind of scenes you want. It is a 2-day process, so we make the dough, we let it rise, then we pan it out, cover it, put it in the refrigerator overnight, and then bring it out, bring it to temperature, and then decorate and bake it. So we're going to start with the dough. First, you need a cup of warm water. I have 2 cups here. You need 2 cups, but we split it. So I'm going to put in a cup of water. And then we're going to add a tablespoon of sugar. I'm just using sugar in the raw. Tablespoon of sugar. And 2.5 teaspoons of yeast. I'm just going to sprinkle it on here. And you want your water to be warm but not hot that it can burn you. If it can burn you, you pour a little bit on your wrist. If it burns, let it cool down, because if you have it too hot, it will kill the yeast. So we're going to leave this here for about 5 minutes, and the yeast is going to start bubbling up if it's alive, and then we can go on with making our bread. While we're doing that, I'm going to show you how to make the herb oil that we're going to use on our tray, and then we pour some over the focaccia dough. You don't have to do this. You can use just plain olive oil, but I feel like this gives a little more flavor. The toppings I'm going to use in my focaccia are Mediterranean toppings, so the herbs I want to use in my my oil are going to be Mediterranean herbs. I have rosemary, I have oregano, marjoram, bay leaf, and a garlic clove. Okay, we're going to start for our herb oil with a 1/2 cup olive oil. Just pour it in here. And then you add your herbs. Another good herb to use, depending on what you're doing, I'm putting my bay leaf in. And you don't have to chop any of these. This is the oregano. I just pulled these out of my herb garden. Some marjoram. Cool. Get those in there. So you don't have to cut them, because we're going to be straining this off. And when we're doing this, we're just wanting to warm the oil up. So I'm going to move it to the low burner. We don't need to cook it per se. And then I'm going to smash my garlic clove. Just like that. So 1/2 cup oil. Let me move it back here. Sorry, camera person. I was not letting you know. And just put it on low, really low. We just want to infuse those herbs in with the oil. Okay, our yeast is softened, it's bubbly, and so we're going to get ready to make the rest of the dough. So you're going to add your 2nd cup of water. Again, warm, not hot. 1/4 cup of olive oil. You're going to start adding flour. We're going to need a total of 5 cups flour. But when you're making bread, you want to start slow, because you don't want to add, depending on the humidity, you know, your bread can not take as much flour, or maybe take more flour than you want. So you kind of scoop it in. And I always have a thing, because I tend to make a mess when I bake. So scoop it in. So we need, I'm going to add 4 cups of flour first. Okay, so I'm finishing up our 4th cup of flour. Getting ready to put it in. And then we need a teaspoon of salt. And bread needs salt in order to rise right, but you don't want to add the salt directly onto the yeast. It can kill the yeast. So always put some flour in and then put your salt in. And then I'm going to I have a KitchenAid with a dough hook. You can do this by hand, but start slowly blending it in. And what I found with this, since I start with the dough hook rather than a paddle, I sometimes need to stop it, scrape the sides, and get everything incorporated. Okay, so it's still blending in. That's only 4 cups of flour. So we're going to add just little bits at a time. and let it blend in. And what you're going to want to do is have it clear the sides of the bowl. And what that means is that it's formed a dough that's cohesive enough that you can see right now there's dough on the sides of the bowl. You're going to get it so there's enough flour that it picks up that dough on the side of the bowl. And it may be stuck on the bottom, but you still want it sticky, but that's how you know it's the right consistency, is if it's not sticking to the sides. So you can see it's getting a little bit thicker. It may actually need today more than 5 cups of flour. Again, it's an inexact science. You just gotta do little bits at a time and see how it's working. Once it starts clearing the sides of the bowl, you're gonna let it knead for about 10 minutes. And that's just low on this, or you can do it by hand. And again, as it starts to form a more cohesive ball, that's what you're looking for. So I decided, just in case people don't have a mixer, I would stop while it's still sticky and show you how to knead it by hand. So you can it's still really sticky. I have a floured Silpat just to protect my counter. I guess I could do it on the counter, but I like the Silpats. I find it easy to wash, and they stay on the counter. Oops, I just hit my cameraman. So we're gonna get our dough out. And then I'm gonna sprinkle a little bit of flour on top of it. And just, you can see how sticky it is right now. So when you knead, you're just gonna push it and fold it. And you wanna do it until it stops being so sticky. You might want a little bit of stickiness, but not a whole lot. And so add flour as you need it. As you need it, sorry. All right, so you can see how it's not picking up as much flour as I'm kneading it. So that is telling me it is just about ready to go in the bowl and rest and rise. So I have my dough. I'm just gonna put a little bit of oil in my bowl. I sprayed it, but I like adding a little bit of olive oil too. Gonna put my dough in, turn it around, get that oil on all sides of it. And you can cover it with plastic wrap, or I'm actually gonna get a plate. All right, so I've turned my dough so it's oiled on both sides, and I'm gonna get a plate. You can put saran wrap or some of the like shower cap covers on your bowl. I just like a plate. It's easier to clean in case it rises up too much. And you're gonna let it sit for 1 hour to 2 hours until it's about doubled in size. So we're gonna take a break and we'll come back in a few hours and see what we have. It's been about 1 hour, and I'm just going to check and see what our bread looks like. It's doubled up, and I'm going to just do a few little turns of it. I'm trying to do this one-handed. If you let it rise more, it helps develop the flavor. That's part of why we're going to let it rise in the refrigerator overnight. It just gives it a whole lot more flavor. So I've kind of turned it over. Patted it down. They say punch it down. I just do it gently. And there we have our dough. I'm going to cover it back up again, and we'll go from there in another hour. So we have our herb-infused oil, and it's been simmering for about 15-20 minutes. I'm going to turn it off, and then putting a strainer over a measuring cup. I'm trying to do this one-handed, which will probably end in disaster. I'm going to just pour our oil, straining it into this measuring cup, and we are going to use that for our pan in just a little bit. So let's take a look at our dough. It's nice and it's risen. I let it rise twice. You don't have to. I actually was just in the midst of doing some stuff and needed a little bit extra time. So bread can be really easy. I know a lot of people think bread is a difficult thing to do, but it's not. Just you can put it off a little bit if you need to. Just punch it down, let it rise again, and you're fine. So we have our bread dough, and I'm going to take our tray. Normally you would be using a large cookie sheet like this for your focaccia. If you had a regular oven, right now my oven is broken, so I am going to be using 2 smaller pans. And so what you do is you take some of your oil and you put it on your pan. You kind of swoosh it around so it gets in all the corners. You can even use your hands, wash your hands, but you can even use your hands and, you know, just kind of get it around all the edges of the pan. And you actually do want a little bit of oil on your hands because when you go to get the dough out, you may need it. So get your dough out. I'm going to be dividing mine in 2 because I have a small oven. I can't do a big tray. So using a bench knife, okay, you can see it's a little sticky. Cut your dough in half. I'm actually going to freeze half of it. I can freeze half of it just as dough when I get ready to make bread later. Okay. So I'm going to take the dough that I'm not using right now, put it in a Tupperware, stick it in the freezer. When I want to use it, take it out the night before, put it in the refrigerator, let it warm up, and then continue like we're going to be doing here with the plating of the focaccia. So I take my dough, put it on here. You're going to want to put a little bit of oil on there. And you're going to dimple it. So you don't want to be too rough with it. You're just kind of trying to push it to the sides of the pan. And you see how it's springing back on me? That is because the gluten is stressed. And so what I need to do is just kind of get it out a little bit and now stop and give it about 15 minutes to relax, and it should be easier to handle. So again, people think bread making is tough. You just got to learn what to do. If the bread's not doing what you want, if it's not going to the corners of the pan, stop, let it rest, and come back to it. It's that easy. Okay, so we're coming back to our dough. I put the silpat over it just to keep it from drying out too much. I'm going to put a little bit more of our herb oil in our pan, a little bit on top of it. And we're going to start seeing if it's relaxed enough to spread out. You know, my dad always used to say, bread making is not rocket science, and it really isn't. It's getting to know, you know, what the dough is supposed to feel like. And his suggestion, if you've never kneaded dough before, is to go and get some of the frozen bread dough. I think it's Mrs. Rhodes in an orange bag in the freezer section. Bring it home, take a loaf out, let it thaw, and then try kneading it. That's the consistency you want your bread dough to be. So if you've never kneaded dough before, you know, try it with the frozen bread dough and see how it goes. So as you see, we're getting it. It's relaxed enough. The gluten's relaxed. We're getting it almost to the edges of the pan. We're not going to worry too much about getting all the way because it's going to go into our refrigerator overnight. It's going to get more flavor and it's going to rise a little bit. The cold does inhibit the rising of the bread, but when we take it out tomorrow, it will finish up and be nice and feel full in this pan. So all you need to do, you can either take a big plastic bag or you can use plastic wrap. You know, we have enough oil on the top of the dough. I don't think it's going to stick. And just cover it up. Stick it in your refrigerator in a safe place where something's not going to be set on top of it. And we'll come back tomorrow and finish it up. There we go. So the next morning, you're going to bring your focaccia dough out of the refrigerator, let it start coming to room temperature, and while it's doing that, you can start preparing your toppings. I'm going to be using a red onion. I like these small multicolored peppers. You're really going to need smaller toppings than you think. So this is a really nice size to make like sunflowers, or cut them in rounds and make other types of flowers. I have some little cherry tomatoes, and then these are great. I just found these are called sprinkles. They're little tiny tomatoes. They're in red, orange, and yellow. And they're the perfect size for topping this focaccia. I also have some capers and some Greek olives, pitted Greek olives. And I'll cut those up and show you how you can use those to make the toppings and make the floral part of the focaccia. And I also have some herbs. I just went out to the herb garden. Really, any herbs would work. I have some rosemary, some chives, thyme, oregano, parsley. My parsley is kind of middling right now. Bronze fennel, and some sage and some garlic chives. And I have a bowl of water over here. What I'm going to do is rinse the herbs, and then you want to soak them in the water for at least a half hour so that they don't burn when you go to bake them. So I'm going to start prepping the vegetables for making the floral part of the focaccia. So as the bread is coming back to temperature, you're going to want to uncover it. Take a little bit of that herb oil that we made yesterday. Pour a little bit on here. And again, try to maybe get it out into the edges of the pan, just really gently. It's still rising. And then you can cover it back up again. It's still cold, but we'll give it some more time before we put the toppings on. All right, so I have some of our ingredients for the topping cut out, and I keep calling it floured focaccia, but you could make almost any type of scene. I think I'm going to try an underwater one sometime. And just because these are what I'm using doesn't mean you can't use other things. Some people I know have used pepperoni to make little characters. You can use Parmesan cheese to be sand or dirt. And so just some of the peppers I'll cut into rings. They make nice flowers like that. And you want to go thin. And I try to separate things by color. And even though I'm cutting them now, as I start to put them on the focaccia, I might find that I need them shorter or thinner. And so I always have my kitchen shears nearby to fix any toppings that I might need. You'll see the tomatoes are on a napkin. So you kind of want to drain them. So when I'm using tomatoes like to make a flour, I will actually cut, again, in slices so that it sets flat. If I tried to put this on here, you see how it wobbles. So I'll just cut a slice, and then I set it there to drain a little bit. But you can actually use those for holly or something at the Christmas season if you wanted to. Okay, so I have my ingredients cut, my toppings cut, and I always end up cutting a whole lot more than I need. And so in that case, I'll plan on having like pizza night or something where I can use the toppings later. So then we've had our greens, our herbs soaking in water so that they don't burn. You can take like a chive, and that makes a really nice stem. So, just kind of put it on here. You can even curve it around a little bit, give it a little bit of a different texture, and I kind of poke it in a little bit just to hopefully keep it, maybe keep it going in there. And then let's make a sunflower. So I'll take some of my olive bits that I've cut up, and I make my center, just so then I know what I can work on. Always start with the biggest thing you're going to do. If you want a sunflower to be your centerpiece, start with that, because then you can always put smaller things around it. So just start adding your pepper. And I always keep my ingredients, my extra peppers and tomatoes and stuff out, because you never know how much you're going to need. You might want to go back and fill in. This is going to be a little sparse. And cut smaller, thinner than what you think you might need. And the one thing I also learned as I've done this is I started very conservatively at first, not adding much to it, and I actually like it where they're kind of busy and crazy, but you know, that's personal choice, and you can do it whatever way you want to. So again, like this is kind of thick. Not that they all have to be the same size. I'm just going to take my kitchen shears and just kind of snip it off. I have one thinner piece and a smaller piece, and then I just use these smaller pieces to fill in. So really easy. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be perfect. And as you're cutting things, you know, you might get ideas. Like today, when I was cutting the tomatoes and the olives, I thought, wow, you know, it almost looks like, let's see, find this one, and look at my knife. If I took one of these little tomatoes, cut it like that, cut a little top off of it, put it here, added the top of an olive, it almost looks like a little ladybug. Let me cut. I had to show the two different wings. So just kind of like that, and it's a little, can be a little ladybug. So, you know, just experiment. You know, I haven't done this before, but you could do a butterfly using the orange peppers, and take a chive, cut two little antennae from it, like that. That might be a little big.
You could cut a tomato smaller and then like use two like halves.
So of red, do you think of red or go with?
I think red, like cut this piece in half and then use those as the top wings, and then cut a smaller one in half and use them as bottom wings.
Okay, so we can do.
Oh.
So you're saying like?
No, I meant like in half.
Why don't you pause it and then you? Okay. Or as Gabby and I just figured out, we could have a little butterfly here. So you take tomatoes, the bigger tomatoes, and then the smaller tomatoes as the lower wings. And then maybe have a little bit of yellow one just right here in the center, just to add a little bit more color. There we go.
The olives is like the little top of the antennae.
And then we can add some more olives. There, oops. So isn't that cute? So you can do all sorts of things, and then just take some of your herbs. You know, rosemary makes really nice flowers down here. You can add a little bit of a pepper ring, and then fill it in with a little bit of tomato. You know, again, anything, just be creative. You can take a little bit of chive. Let me go smaller right here. And then take some of these little yellow tomatoes and kind of just make, or red tomatoes, little blossoms coming out over the side. Like that. Maybe even alternate. Do some red, some yellow. It's all, just make it up. Make it up as you go. I saw this, I did this the other day. I kind of liked it, making a poppy flower. So take a bell pepper curve, kind of like that, and then add some olive, maybe a little bit more of the flecks. Right there, fill it in. And then you can take your oregano and you can add leaves to your flowers. So really easy. I know that some of these look very complicated. They're not. Create, have fun. Using the red onions, you can use them to either be, they can be make part of like sunflowers, or you can make kind of thistle-y type things with them. And again, I feel like this is kind of thick. I'm just going to cut it. Just go up both sides of it. And while I'm decorating, I do have my oven on 450. And when we go to bake this, it's going to be 20 to 25 minutes in your oven. You can turn it on convection if you want to. Just for right now, convection was going to be really loud. So again, like I said, I always keep my kitchen shears handy just as I'm doing stuff. I just cut as needed for width or length. But so easy, and just let your creativity go. They all look perfect. It really doesn't matter. I mean, they're beautiful. Nature's not perfect. It's, you know, it is just nature. And then you can add some fennel. It makes nice little things. And they don't have to be all in the same place. Just kind of have them floating in midair. Why not? Get a few sage. Sage is great because you can kind of just go like this, put them out and grab, oh, I don't know. Oh, let's go with a tomato like that. And that looks pretty, that's fine. You know, grab your oregano. This is another oregano. Just kind of pop it down there. Let me see. I know I have some parsley in here. Thyme, again, just put some thyme in here. Just lay it in there, whatever. Have fun. I've lost my parsley. There we go. Like I said, parsley's nice. It's like frilly. Just put it in there. And then before you go to bake it, you're gonna want to brush it with a little bit more of that herb oil. That just helps keep everything from burning. I might go before I put this in the oven and add just a few more things, but this gives you the basic idea of what we're doing. The fennel, you're gonna wanna make sure it's kind of pushed down here so it doesn't burn. Lots of ideas on Pinterest, you know, just, I said, go crazy, have fun. All right. And I'm gonna maybe add a few more things and we'll put this in the oven, and because I have capers, I have tons of stuff cut out. Like I said, I always cut more out than I need. So I might add just a few more things just to get rid of some of our ingredients. But it's always you're gonna want to cut things smaller than you think, because even on the big one, it's going to, you're gonna want to go smaller. So anyway, I'll be ready to put this in the oven in just a little bit. All right, so it's been a little over 20 minutes. And I'm gonna pull out our focaccia. Look at how pretty that is. And put it on a pan to cool, a rack to cool. I'm actually going to get it out of the pan and set it on the rack. But look at how pretty that is. Anyway, so once it cools, you probably want to eat it within a day just because of the toppings. But enjoy.